For the uninitiated, the simulation theory states that everything that happens in Cyberpunk 2077 is happening inside a simulation. This theory is something that I've seen many people misinterpret in the past. So today, we're going to have an in-depth look at Cyberpunk's simulation theory. We'll look at different clues and evidence left behind in the game. Some of the evidence has been there all along, but we all just missed it. Let's begin from the beginning. After your brief life path intro, the first mission you get is called the Rescue. In this mission, you're tasked with rescuing a young girl who was snatched from the streets of Night City by some mean-looking Russians. The Russians are members of a gang called the Scavs. As you arrive at your destination, Jackie offers you a Militech training shard. If you accept it, you're transported to a virtual world where T-Bug acts as your drill instructor. It's quite impressive. This looks and feels exactly like the world in the game. The virtual process of shooting and fighting also feels quite real. The world of Cyberpunk 2077 has multiple technologies that make it easy to experience a fake reality as though it was real. A simpler example of this is the brain dance. This is just the beginning of the theory. If we truly were in a simulation in the game, surely there'd be more signs, more clues, right? The world-famous movie The Matrix has perhaps one of the best depictions of a simulation that I've ever seen. The simulation in The Matrix feels real. People have jobs, they have duties, they have friends, and they have bosses they hate. It feels just as mundane and just as average as the real world. During The Matrix, there's a scene where Morpheus, Neo, and the gang are walking up a set of stairs, and Neo sees a cat. As he turns around to continue walking up the stairs, he looks back and he sees the exact same cat again. So Neo goes, "Hey man, I've just seen the cat twice. That's quite weird. Deja vu." Trinity responds and asks if Neo is sure that it's the same cat. Neo says yes. So in the movie, deja vu is a sign that there's a glitch in the Matrix. It happens when they change something. They simply means whoever owns and controls the Matrix. In the movie, this was the machines. In the game, it could be anyone. Now, why would I be telling you all this? Allow me to present Exhibit A found in the game. I know that perhaps that's not very convincing to some people. Sometimes a cat is just a cat. So what else does the game give us in terms of clues that this could be a simulation? One of the more interesting subplots in the game is the one that shows us that an invasion is coming. Rogue AIs who were locked away in the old net are finally finding their way back. Inside the Sanishore bunkers, you can read some of the messages that they send to each other. The rogue AIs seem confident that if it came down to it, they would dominate humanity. One message among all of the messages they send to each other gives us the next clue. Why would a rogue AI make it to our side and then message back across the black wall to tell others that our world is illusionary? This is not a message it's spreading to humans. This is a message it's sending back. Some people have mentioned that this is perhaps a meta commentary on the fact that this is just a game. Hence, this is an illusion. But I don't think that CDPR is that lazy. I don't think CDPR would do that because that is not how they give us clues. This next example shows us how CDPR gives us clues. The FF06B5 saga is massive and it deserves its own mini-movie at some point. I'm not going to cover all of it here as I've done multiple videos on the subject. Instead, we'll focus on what happens once you've solved everything. Once you've entered the codes in the mainframes at the church in Biotechnica Flats, a new quest appears. You make your way to the location on the map, sit down on the mattress, and meditate until this happens. For the longest time, I've always wondered what the hell this was. It felt like a weird series of numbers that CDPR just added for no reason at all. But that's not true. There's a number in physics called the fine structure constant. The most recent calculation of this constant was done in 2023, and this is what it was calculated to. Not everyone is a physics major, so I'll explain what a fine structure constant is quickly. This constant is denoted by the Greek letter alpha. It's a fundamental physical constant that characterizes the strength of electromagnetic interactions between charged particles. It's a dimensionless number, approximately equal to 1 out of 137, meaning it represents a ratio and has no units. So you basically can't have a fine structure constant in kilometers per hour or joules or whatever. The number just is. It also plays a key role in influencing the structure of atoms and the behavior of light and matter. If the fine structure constant disappeared, the fundamental forces of electromagnetism would be profoundly changed or cease to exist. This would literally change the nature of the universe. Atoms would not form as we know them, resulting in matter itself ceasing to exist in its current form. This would lead to a universe without stable atoms, molecules, and the chemical processes necessary for life. What I'm trying to say here is this. If you know the fine structure constant of a given world or universe, you can then work your way to forming stable atoms, molecules, chemical processes, and basically create anything you want. You can create human beings, you can create cars, cyberware, or anything else. For the perceptive among you, you've already noticed that this number is extremely similar to the number that CDPR shows us at the beginning of the cutscene. My theory is that as we reach enlightenment in the game, we become perceptive enough to see this information. I believe that the beginning of this cutscene is someone or something calculating the exact fine structure constant for wherever we are so they can show us the cube. This means that the cube is not just in our head. This cube actually appears in the real world of the game. The messages we get as you observe the cube are clear. You shouldn't trust anyone. This is true on so many levels, but if we look at it from a simulation theory point of view, you shouldn't trust anyone because whoever's running the simulation may not have your best interests at heart. There is no future when you're in a simulation. Just simply by the nature of a simulation, you are in a confined moment in time. Almost like a prison where you can't quite see the edges, you can't quite see where it ends, but you know that there is an end and that you are in a prison. In this same spirit, turn back could mean that we need to return back to the simulation before whoever's running it discovers this cube thing. Before they discover that we know too much. Something else happens during this cutscene that has been talked about before, mostly on Reddit, and I think I'll tag the Reddit post I'm talking about right here so you can go ahead and read that if you'd like to know more about what happens during FF06B5. But the thing about those visuals in the cutscene is this. They are unlike any visuals we've seen so far in the game. Also worth noting is the fact that the sound we hear during the white screen portion of the cutscene is quite similar to what we hear when we approach a downed Netrunner. We also hear this sound around Songbird in the mission The Killing Moon. This could suggest that a connection to the net is happening during the famous cutscene. The Watcher, the Watched, and the Gaze. In this chapter of the theory, we'll look at something less technical, less physics, and more psychology basically. That could also be a clue. There's a lot of cool literature around this subject, so I hope you'll indulge me as I touch on some of the main ones before we get to the clues in Cyberpunk 2077. The gaze as a subject was mainly developed by French thinkers in the 1800s and 1900s. Jacques Lacan theorized initially that the gaze begins in humans when a child first looks into a mirror and realizes that there exists a reality outside themselves. This is when a human child is introduced to culture and the real world. Before Jacques Lacan, Sigmund Freud theorized something similar, resulting in what we now know as the Oedipus complex and the Electra complex. There have been some attempts at developing the gaze further into concepts like the male gaze and the female gaze, and there have been some missed development areas like the social media gaze, which is something that I just coined myself for this video. I honestly don't know if there is research around this subject already, but I couldn't find any. But if there is no research, then I claim this theory as my own. What I call the social media gaze is basically people going on social media and then changing their character, attitudes, beliefs, and desires based on what they see on social media. The reason we're talking about this is because in 1930, Michel Foucault applied the medical gaze to conceptually describe and explain the act of looking as part of the process of medical diagnosis. Here he talked about the unequal power dynamics between the observer, i.e. the doctor, and the observed, i.e. the patient. This power imbalance happens all around us, even in places and situations where we would assume that the opposite would be true. The watcher tends to have more power than the watched. I'll give you a few examples of that below, but first, guess what happens in Cyberpunk? Well, you don't really need to guess because I'll tell you. In the game, after the famous cutscene, you can read messages on a laptop you find nearby. In these messages, you find out that there is a watcher out there watching us. Their gaze is fixed on everything that's happening in Cyberpunk 2077. In this simulation that we find ourselves in, they hold all the power. This relationship between the watcher and the watched is also found in the Matrix, with the machines being the watchers and the humans being the watched. If you've ever watched a scary movie before, then you've seen the watcher standing outside observing his next victims. In general, this is just one of those things that once you know it, you'll see it everywhere. Even in cartoons like Scooby-Doo, the evil guy who holds the power in the spooky mansion is always the watcher. They always have an eye on the gang, checking out what they're up to and where they're going. This power dynamic in Scooby-Doo is shifted at the end when Scooby and the gang unmask the villain and they now become the watchers. The villain become the watched. In conclusion, whoever the watcher is, he is somehow involved in the simulation we find ourselves in Cyberpunk 2077. Whether he created the simulation or whether he's just doing his job, we don't know. With all that said, this is just a theory. Nothing is canon unless CDPR and Mike Pondsmith say so. Thank you guys for watching this one all the way to the end. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next one.